From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex Podcast episode of the day. Keith Pepper on the Riderflex Podcast again for the second time. Hello, Keith. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me back.
You bet. Are you in Atlanta today?
I am. I've been in Atlanta, save a couple of beach trips since March.
When I saw you last, it was December 2018 in New York. Scott and I were in New York. My partner and I were in New York, and you were working for Outbrain, and we were trying to land some recruiting work with Outbrain. So we were doing a sales call, and you were nice enough to let us visit the office and give you a pitch and all that. That was when Riderflex was a little smaller. I remember you doing that. By the way, I really appreciate that, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And then you came on the Riderflex podcast, which was a great episode. And then I've been following you on LinkedIn and, just staying in touch. And one day I open up LinkedIn and I see this news that you bought a newspaper in Atlanta. I'm like, what the hell? What? I got to reach out to Keith and find out what's going on.
Yeah. If you, as I say, if you want your friends to look at you like you have two heads, tell them that you're buying a newspaper company in 2020.
I definitely took a second look. In fact, I was just having lunch with my wife before the podcast, and I told her who was going to be on the podcast today. And I mentioned that you bought a paper, and that's the exact look she gave me. She kind of looked up from her food and she's like, what? Well, why? And I said, well, I'm about to find out. But before you get into it though, can you just give the listeners just a little reminder about you personally, a little family stuff, maybe where you grew up, and then touch on a little bit of your early career before we roll into Springs Publishing?
Yeah, sure. And that actually ties back into why I'm here and buying a newspaper company. But I was born and raised in Atlanta. I grew up here in the sort of the inner suburbs of Atlanta. I went to the University of Georgia and then left Atlanta for the first time, went traveling abroad after college in 1993, 94. Had an opportunity to live abroad, and that really piqued my interest to get out of Atlanta and explore the world beyond. So I spent almost 22 years in New York with a brief stint in DC before that. And then I came back to Atlanta in about 18 months ago, moved back permanently, left New York after being there for about 20 years total living there. So I started my career when I was 16. My first job was at a local radio station here in Atlanta.
Cool.
And then I went, had a passion for journalism, for all parts of it, really. I told someone recently, when we were a 3 newspaper family every morning when I was growing up, that we got delivered to the house. And then when I was in high school, that wasn't enough for me. So I personally paid for a subscription to the afternoon paper back in, when Atlanta had 2 newspapers. We had a morning paper and an afternoon paper.
Wow.
So it runs deep in my blood to get me, the passion for media and the importance, which I know we'll talk a lot about a little bit later. So in the time in New York, I worked in a handful of different internet startups, mostly in the digital media marketing space, also in the data and information services. Like any startup story, a couple of ones that didn't really go anywhere, and then a couple of better stories, including one that we sold to Experian, which was a great experience. And then also I spent 5 years where I met you working at Outbrain, which is a global advertising platform that works with publishers. And so that's where I left Outbrain about at the end of Q3 last year. So time feels so abstract given 2020. I wrapped up at Outbrain officially in the end of Q3 in 2019.
Gotcha. Okay. Now you didn't move right away though. You stayed in New York for a while, right? Did you just move back to Atlanta?
No, I was here. I actually bought a place in Atlanta 3 years ago. And so when I met you, I was commuting between New York and Atlanta. So I would work in New York Monday through Thursday, and then I would spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Atlanta. So I knew, I knew about 3 or 4 years ago that I wanted to get back here
Okay.
to Atlanta. Family wise, I don't have kids of my own, but I have 5 nieces and nephews who I'm very close with, and two sisters. We all live in a bike riding distance of each other here in Atlanta. So it was important for me to be back close to them. And, I had done what I wanted to do in New York and was ready to get back down here.
Are your parents still alive and healthy and they're still around?
Both my parents passed away. So that was also part of my family is my sisters who we're all lucky that we're friends as well
I
as
see.
family. So it's, that was another thing that drew me back here as well.
What'd your folks do? Was your mom and dad, either one of them in journalism or communications, or what? I'm just wondering where the passion came from.
It's funny. My dad was a kind of an entrepreneur through later in his life, but early in his life, before I was born, he worked at the local newspaper. So he did that. My uncle, on my dad's side, was a journalist, covered the White House for the Baltimore Sun in the Watergate days. And then he was a writer for The Economist. So he it does come, I guess, honestly through that side of the bloodline. My mom was a teacher, but
okay. All of that goes together, and then you majored in journalism, of course, at Georgia. Okay, got it. It all ties together. What was that?
I did. I studied at Georgia, then I worked at local radio stations here in Atlanta, and then left it for a long time. But was always a consumer, always a voracious consumer of news, and a student, I guess, of the industry.
Interesting that as you worked for companies throughout your career, and then some digital companies and some media companies, you got pulled into some of the HR and the culture and the people stuff. I guess that really speaks to your people skills, probably your leadership skills and things like that, because you kind of got pulled into those areas, which I'm guessing you enjoyed, but wasn't necessarily your number one passion, right? I don't know. Tell me, how did that work?
Yeah, it's a passion. I mean, after journalism, after college, I also studied psychology. So I got a master's in clinical social work and worked in a psychiatric hospital. So it's been a crazy, well, I shouldn't say crazy after saying psychiatric hospital. It's been a fun, wild ride. So I've had a lot of great experiences. And I think that my personality, it did sort of lead me towards that part of working in startups. And I mean, if you remember, I didn't go back and listen to our previous conversation, but I got into that HR role at Outbrain in an accidental way. I had sort of become, the person that people came to, at a startup like that, when you're my age, you're kind of the oldest person at the company. And so I hope I was able to lend, sympathetic, empathetic, and a little bit of wisdom and experience. And so I really enjoy that. And I mean, I think I look at this is my first entrepreneurial venture we'll talk about, but I look at any of this stuff, through the lens of building a team. If we build a team that's right and get people that are committed and motivated to do good work, then we're going to be successful. So, I always enjoyed that part of it. And since I left Outbrain, I mean, even in the last year, as I've been looking for this type of opportunity, I've been doing consulting with some local companies on, organizational stuff and helping them, with the managerial and the, coaching type stuff. I feel like a lot of people hang a shingle and say they're coaches these days, but I do enjoy it, and hope to keep doing it as much as I can, both with my own team and then also with others as I can.
Was that the plan? Were you looking for something to purchase when you were still living in New York? Was that the plan? You wanted to buy something of your own, and then while you were doing that, you were just going to do some consulting to pay the bills and along the way? Was that kind of the strategy?
No, not really. I was, I had a great time at Outbrain, and I wanted to be back in Atlanta, and um, it didn't make sense pre-pandemic for me to be the head of HR living in a different city. That didn't make a lot of sense. Now, looking back, it's that everyone's remote. Maybe it would have been a little bit different, but we had a very organized and amicable exit plan for me to wind down and hand off those responsibilities. And
I see.
we did a great, I think that went really well. And then the plan was for me to come back to Atlanta. I mean, one of the things that drives me and ties into this newspaper venture is that I wanted to be back in Atlanta to really be engaged in the community a little bit more civically. I mean, there's a lot of, as everyone who turns on any sort of news, whether it's picking up the newspaper or TV, radio, you know that Georgia is the center of the world right now for about 6 more days. And so, to me, that was a driving force for me to be back here. It feels like Atlanta and Georgia are the kind of place that you can make an impact. It's pretty hard in New York to be, to make an impact. It's so much of that's driven by, just sort of a different level of economics than I am in or aspire to, quite frankly. But in Atlanta, you can really do things that make an impact on a daily basis. So that was a big driver for me to be back here. And then doing the work I was doing has been really meaningful with the small local companies. But and then I started looking around at small businesses to buy. And I basically got introduced to this guy who had started Springs Publishing, which is the newspaper company, and he was looking for a succession plan. He was ready to retire, and we really hit it off as friends. We had some shared life experiences. I was telling that when I did the intro to the team, and we drive the same car, we have the same dog, and we ride the same exercise bike, which I guess a lot of people do now, have Peloton. But we shared sensibilities and the importance of what the papers were doing in the communities that they serve. And so once I started talking to him about the business, it ignited a fire inside of me that I hadn't had in years. And so that's what got the conversation going, and that's how I got to into the mix.
Why don't you tell us? Can you give the listeners a Springs Publishing overview real quick, and the different publications they have, real fast, for those? And then we can go on.
Springs Publishing is the corporate name. Not a lot of folks know that as a consumer, but we have 6. I mean, the company that I acquired has 6 publications, and they're all monthly print publications, which we'll talk about, are still driving the bulk of the revenue. And 5 of them are geographic, so they're what we call hyperlocal. So they serve really 5 of the most influential and affluent communities in Atlanta. So we're in the communities that are called Dunwoody, Sandy Springs, Buckhead, and Brookhaven, which are sort of the ring on the north side of the city of Atlanta. Buckhead's actually in Atlanta. And then we have one that serves what's called the Intown community. So that would be your more, sort of urban living in Atlanta, in-town communities. And then we have a vertical publication called Atlanta Senior Life, which goes to the active senior community. And that one's not tied to geography. That one goes outside of our other coverage areas.
I see.
But it's a real exciting vertical. I mean, that space is super interesting. It's growing. It's more boomers age, and people looking to get information out to that community, and also for marketers to reach that demographic has been something that's super important to them.
And what's the I don't know how you measure yourself in the newspaper world or the publishing world. Do you measure it by readers, subscribers? What and can you talk about any of that? Can you go into any details for how large it is from a reader perspective?
Yeah, so our model is we're a community newspaper, which means sometimes these are referred to as alternative papers. Our distribution model is we're free. So we're not subscription based. So we distribute in the mail using a service that the Postal Service has that we pay for. And we distribute in the mail to zip codes in our communities. So whether you want it or not, you're going to get our paper in your mailbox.
I see.
And the mail delivery is a differentiator for us quality wise, because it means that it's not sitting on the end of your driveway for you to pick up during a rainstorm. It's not sitting in your driveway when you may be on vacation and have to worry about maybe safety issues. And so we're a high quality print product that comes in the mail, almost like a direct mail piece, but just with a lot of great content in it. And then we also distribute, or we publish on the web. So all of our information is available on our websites. It's all free. There's no paywall. So we are 100% advertiser supported right now. And so
Gotcha.
there's no real subscription number to talk about, and that, but we print about 85,000 copies a month in our geographic areas.
I see.
That go into those neighborhoods. Yeah.
About 85,000. And does that go to every address and the zip codes that you service? Is that how that works?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, there's a couple of little quirks where we don't distribute right now to multi-family housing. So we go to homeowners in those communities and not to some of the larger like apartment complexes. But we do just we do distribute some of those into like their we drop them off in their community room, and then we also drop off newspapers at high-end businesses around town. So your cafes, your restaurants, your Whole Foods.
I see.
Kind of places as well. So it's like your local, alt weekly, monthly newspaper that you may pick up when you're sitting down to have brunch or have a cup of coffee.
Do you have more readers from the printed material or more readers looking at your stuff online, you think? Any idea?
Well, I don't have a great sense yet, but I mean, I think, our online numbers are way higher.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously people are still advertising in these publications, or else you wouldn't be in business, right? I mean, because if you're, if it's not subscription based, then your people are paying for ads, so it's obviously still making money.
Yeah, it's a profitable, small business. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's a very clean type of business. It's there's one revenue source, and we are a sensible way for local and regional businesses as well to reach a really coveted demographic in Atlanta. So if you're a local business, if you're real estate, if you're medical or specialty medical, businesses, and you're looking to connect with your local community, we are the most efficient way to do that.
Yeah. What are the bulk of the advertisers? Local restaurants, local real estate agents, local insurance agents? Who are your heavy advertisers?
Yeah, I mean, so real estate, medical, or specialty medical, and then the professional services, legal, insurance, and then restaurants are going through a really tough time right now. So we're not really. We're looking at other ways that we can help that community. Through a really high quality editorial, really getting the word out about them and the ones that are doing good work. But we're not sending the sales team and knock on restaurant doors right now.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Same for me. Same for me. There's our recruiting sales force here. We're not knocking on restaurant doors to see if we can do any recruiting for them right now. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah. It's a really difficult time.
So did you bootstrap this thing yourself? I mean, not bootstrap, but you purchased it yourself. Did you have any partners? Is it all you, or are you 100% owner? How much of that can you go into?
Yeah, it's me. I mean, it's me and the previous owner is helping me do it. So.
Oh, okay.
So we're in it together.
Okay. Okay, so you worked out a deal where you're buying it from him probably over time or some sort of buyout or whatever. I don't know, however it's structured. Are you
Yeah,
in? Let me ask a question though. During this early phase though, are you in control? Can you do whatever you want, or do you? Okay.
yeah. I can do whatever I want. I mean, it's not my personality. I like to build consensus and
I hear you. I
make
hear
sure
you.
getting input from other folks that know a lot more about this business than me. I tell the team, I think, what I bring to the table is a lot of energy and enthusiasm for the business and for the community. I mean, Atlanta is going through just a real boom time right now, in a lot of different areas, business, civically, all eyes are on Atlanta right now. And also, culturally, the influence of Atlanta, around the world, really, whether it's music or the filming industry, the movie industry, shoots more films in Georgia than it does in California now. So
Really didn't know that.
and Fortune 500 companies moving here all the time. So Atlanta is it's a great place. I mean, a lot of my friends from LA or New York tell me, if there was an ocean in Atlanta, everyone would be living here.
Well, it's not far. It's not far. I mean, you can go down to Destin. You can get to Destin in what? I don't know, 3 hours, 2 hours. What is it? I don't even know.
I was just there over Thanksgiving, but yeah, I mean, Charleston's 5 hours away. Hilton Head's 4.5 hours away. So
Yeah.
it's doable. But if you're a daily surfer, it's a far way. But it's a real boom time for Atlanta.
How many employees you got?
So we have 7 full-time employees right now. Got a couple of open heads that we're actively recruiting for.
Okay. Okay.
Both on the editorial side, and then it's ever since the announcement came out, I've heard from old colleagues and folks that are want to know what we're doing and want to see what they can see if there's a way for them to work with us.
Is everything remote as far as your workers, and then what about the print, the physical print? Is that outsourced? Do you have your own press, your own machinery? What talk to me about that? Yeah, go ahead.
We're super nimble. I mean, we don't, one of the things that makes the business profitable is we don't own printing presses, we don't own trucks.
Okay.
So we outsource our printing to a local printing press that's here that does a lot of work in the area. I think they're the biggest. Someone told me today they're the biggest employer in their county in Georgia. So they're about halfway between here and Athens. We have a great relationship with them, and they do super high quality work. And we've been using them from the very beginning. And then we are basically a virtual company. We have an office suite where we people can go into if they need, but since March, everyone's been working remotely, and obviously with the different cloud platforms, we're able to produce the paper and keep things going in a virtual world. And I think it's one of the exciting things about this business is we don't want salespeople sitting around at their desks. We want them out as much as they can in the current climate, talking to people, walking the streets, seeing what's happening, what's opening in our communities. And then, the same with the journalists. But it's been since the pandemic, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we cover in the local governments, the city council, the zoning boards, et cetera, now they're all virtual. So we can have someone that's covering, stuff without sitting in Atlanta traffic, which is
great.
If there is anything in the con category of Atlanta, traffic is would probably be one of those things.
What's been the scariest thing for you so far? Besides the personal, income that you put into it, your personal funds, besides writing the check, what's been the scariest thing for you so far?
I mean, I'm super excited. I mean, had a great conversation with the local columnist for the Atlanta, for the big Atlanta paper, the daily paper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is, doing a great job. And his lead in the article is, I heard the community paper was getting sold, and I had to find out who the nut job that was buying it was. So the rest of the article was fair, super fair and positive and funny. So it's, there's definitely, this is my first time being an entrepreneur. So I imagine other folks wake up in the middle of the night with a to-do list that they're going over in their head to do. I think, but I'm still excited. I mean, there's a lot of macroeconomic headwinds in the publishing industry and the news media industry across the board, and those are very real. There's no, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're not. But the hyperlocal space and the way that this business has been built and the way that I think we can operate the business, is still, in an efficient, profitable way. So I told the team I bring, a lot of energy to the table, a little bit of capital, and a lot of, healthy dose of naivete. So, I think being able, which is, generally been hopefully my MO in life, of being able to say, I don't have all the answers, and, ask questions and defer to people that know a lot more about the stuff than me. I'm really confident that we're going to be successful. And I think that the reaction from the community and people reaching out to me that have known me for a long time, that both personally and professionally is overwhelmingly been positive. And so I'm taking a lot of energy from that and moving forward.
There's a couple of things I thought about, I wanted to share with you as I was preparing yesterday and today for the interview. First of all, I've seen Facebook and some other giant companies try to do local stuff, or try to navigate through, like, you can click on this or click on that and try to get some local news, but really it's just not good. It's not good. There's no local reporter here from any giant firm talking to a local business owner about something, so it's not entertaining, and it's not educational, and it just doesn't work from what I've seen. I'm not an expert on it, but I have seen bigger companies try to do local stuff that doesn't work. That's the first thing I thought about. The other thing I thought about was, there is, in the little town I live in, because I live in a small rural town in northern Colorado, farm community for the most part, it has a little paper, Johnstown Breeze. If somebody was putting that in my mailbox once a month or once every 2 weeks, I would read it. If it came in the mailbox, I would read it. To your point, because I do want to know what's going on in the community. Nobody's knocked on my door to try to get me to buy a subscription, and I don't know if I would buy a subscription, but from what you told me, like, if that paper is hitting my mailbox and I'm not having to pay for it, yes, I would pick it up and I would read it, to your point. And so that's why I like the model that you described. And I think that could go over well in a bunch of communities. Maybe you should buy some more newspapers.
I was at lunch with a couple of local community leaders, and they asked what my plan was to buy more, and I said, let's get one right first, and or one group right first, and then see. But I think that it's the information, whether you live in a small rural community in northern Colorado or in one of the 10 biggest cities in the country. In Atlanta, like, needing to know what's happening in your neighborhood with your school board, with your zoning, your city council. Unfortunately, a lot of in big cities across the country, there's crime, and people need to know about public safety issues as well. But one of the first people to reach out to me when this went through was a local city councilman in Sandy Springs, and he said to me, the political, what the saying is of ethics wise, would you do this if you knew it would end up on the front page of the paper? If there's no front page of the paper, then our government is operating, without any sort of thing. So, there is a, not to sound too grandiose about it, there is a civic, or maybe it's important to sound, grandiose about it, because it's for these local communities that we serve, we are the paper of record. There is a city council, there is a mayor, people are paying a lot of taxes. These are, very affluent communities. So, folks need to know, need to be held accountable. And so that, that sort of journalism and being a student of it for a long time is critically important. And there's been an erosion of trust, across the board, whether you're in local media or you're in national media. There's been an erosion of trust of what to believe. So, I think what we're, in that sense, what we're doing is just critically important to a well-functioning society. And if I can do a little bit of that, if we can do a little bit of that in our little neck of the woods or slice of the world, then that's great. And, if we can do it in a way that's profitable and allows us to be sustainable, then that's even better.
Very good. Now, to spice it up with a little entertainment here, a little Hollywood, what happens when some powerful guy in town finds out you're about to write a story, and you come home one night and there's some goon sitting out in your driveway. He's like, "Hey man, you can't write that story." Yeah.
Oh, I'm not gonna tell him where I live, so that's that hopefully. I mean, look, it's a. I know that you're being tongue in cheek about it, and it's the end of the year, you read all these yearly recap stories. It's a major issue around the world, right? The safety of journalists, and
it is.
Yeah. I know that you're not being dismissive of it, but it is something that's critically important. I'll take that question and sort of twist it a little, which is like, if people find out we're writing about them and they complain or they try to pressure us in violent ways to stop, it's, I love it because it means that we're being read. It means people care, so the more letters we get from folks complaining about our coverage, as long as I know that the coverage is fair and our journalists are working in the ethical way that they are, and I know that they are, then, I'm happy that people care enough to write letters. So I hope that's a problem that we continue to have.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, if you don't have some haters, so to speak, if you don't have some people upset at something, not enough people are reading you. We get that happens with our own podcast as well. Like we want some pushback on some of the stuff we put out, or that means we don't have enough viewers. So, but yeah, you're right. All joking aside, I did think about the political aspect of the stuff you're dealing with in small town or even smaller communities where, you're going to publish stuff that's going to piss people off sometimes. Or let's say there's somebody that's been placing a bunch of ads in your paper for 5 years because she has a business, and all of a sudden a competitor opens up that you do a giant story on, and you put it on the front page, and then she calls you and you're like, "Damn, Keith, I've been paying you." I can just see it all, man.
I mean, it's that trade-off that we need to be, we're objective, and, we're not wading into a ton of controversy. I mean, as a community newspaper, we're being fair and covering it, and people wouldn't know there's not a side that we take, but, we're also really leaning into, the coverage that, engages people around food, around real estate, arts and culture. And so, to the extent that we come out of, as the vaccine, really takes hold and our cultural life picks back up, I think that's going to be an area too that we're, that people come to us for that sort of what's happening. What should I go see? What should I go listen to?
Yep.
So we want to be fair, independent coverers of that stuff, but we also want to be supportive of that community because, it's a vital piece to us functioning.
How do you balance, just reporting the facts versus taking sides and all of that stuff? You hear all this noise from people that, they're like, "Oh, well, CNN is this and Fox is that," and all these different outlets take sides on everything, or at least people think they do. Whether or not they do or not, I don't know, but people think they do, whatever the side is, right? Whether it's liberal, conservative, COVID, not COVID, masks, not mask, whatever the topic is, it seems like everybody gets pushed into a side. How do you are you planning on just trying to be as neutral as possible on stuff? Like, how do you navigate that as a journalist?
Yeah, well, I'm not a journalist, so I should say that up front. I'm responsible for the editorial side because I'm responsible for the company, but I'm not going to see my byline in the paper, and I defer to our journalists who are professional, career journalists to make those, to make the right decisions there. I think that we alluded to earlier, there's been an erosion of trust in information, right? There's no more discernible truth in our national discourse, and why that is, I'm sure people can debate that and get to an answer, but I think the more that people are in their echo chambers and they only see what's in their Facebook feed, they curate that down to an area that makes them feel good, and they're just constantly reassured. That's not a very healthy place to be, and we all all of us from the top down go into that bubble, unfortunately. So our goal as a community paper, I think, is to not engage in those those divisive topics. I think that we're generally able to to cover things that are on a local level, which I think haven't really bubbled up to that level of divisiveness that you refer to. So this is we're not an inherently political paper or publisher. That's just not our local politics. And there certainly are a lot of issues right now in Atlanta that are pretty heated, whether it's around schools going back into session, which is obviously a big thing right now. Crime. We're headed into a year of mayoral elections in 2 of our cities that we cover, at least 2 of those. So there is stuff that does fall into, I think, the dynamic that you mentioned, which is people may disagree vehemently on these topics, but we're gonna be as fair as we can be in covering those independently.
It is nice to get news on something else, though, right? Like, for example, even myself, I'm just sitting here as we're talking, I'm thinking, they keep saying they're going to redo Charlotte Street and they're going to redo all the sewer lines and redo the sidewalks all the way down one of the main streets in town. And I'd like to know when that's going to happen, because I live on that street.
That's how it works.
We voted to build a new high school. Oh, well, that's cool. I wonder when that's going in and where's it going, by the way. I don't know. Nobody's told me. You know why? Because I'm opening up Facebook, seeing all this national news that I really don't give a shit about. It's super negative anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's we want to be a little bit of good news. We want to be real and keep you focused on what's happening in your hyperlocal world, and it's
I like it.
It's important for society, for sure.
I like it. So you're a big time entrepreneur now. You've taken a ton of risks at this already.
All time.
Man, I really, hey, I'm super excited for you. There's going to be some, I'm sure you've had them already. There's going to be a few nights where you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, walking around in your living room going, oh man, what have I done?
Yeah, but I'm super lucky too that everyone stayed on board, and the team knows we're not changing. We're changing as little as possible about the business. So we want clients to not be disrupted. I want the team to be focused on what they're doing. I've been through enough mergers and acquisitions and integrations to know that it can be a distraction. So my goal first and foremost is to really not change anything. I want people to keep functioning and doing what they're doing. So I hope, again, injecting some energy, some fresh ideas, new ways to look at things, and, healthy dose of naivete to go along with it is hopefully going to be additive to what we're doing.
Last time you were on the show, I asked you what your core purpose in life was. And at that time you said you wanted to just make an impact. You wanted to make an impact in the world. You want to go deeper on that with core purpose? Have you thought about that any further? How would you define your core purpose now in life?
Well, I think that's still it. I mean, I think this is a big step towards doing that. And I don't think I realized how much of an impact it would have. I've been, pleasantly, overwhelmed with the response from people, and it's people are excited, and to me, if we can, provide a great product that does, provide information and keep people informed, then to me that's, headed towards that goal of doing that. So I'll stick with that. I'll stick with
Very
that.
good. Very good. So for the listeners, by the way, the main website is reporternewspapers.net. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our four geographic ones in the northern kind of suburbs of Atlanta. So that's Springs, Dunwoody, Buckhead, and Brookhaven. And then we have Atlanta Intown paper .com, and we're working on just getting everything kind of sort of more standardized digitally to to present a more unified front.
Okay.
Well, but you can get to everything that we have through through that Reporter Newspapers or even springspublishing.com.
Or springspublishings.com. Okay. springspublishing.com or reporternewspapers.net. Okay, very good. Keith, thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast, and congratulations.
No, thanks for reaching out. And I'm going to make you go on the record and say, have me back in a quarter or two when I have some more experience under my belt and see how we're doing. So.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, my man. Thank you so much, sir. If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviewing. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get information and pricing on the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.